The best late-night conservative talk show in America, Sackheads Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk than Sackhead Sean and Sackhead Clint. And we're working on the immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here, too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late-night conservative talk, Sackheads Radio.
Freedom Fest. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, back at Freedom Fest 2015. You're listening to the SHR Media Network. We have another great interview as we're trying to get you as many as we possibly can. Young lady Alexis. Alexis, tell everyone your name so I don't destroy it. As I discussed, I'm not afraid to admit it. And where you're from and why you're at Freedom Fest.
Well, my name is Alexis Esneault, and I'm from Huntsville, Alabama. And I'm at Freedom Fest kind of wearing two hats. I'm with two different organizations. One is Students for Liberty, which is a worldwide student organization that's focused on liberty and education of liberty. And then the other organization that I'm representing is actually the organization that I'm interning for this summer. And that is called Take Back Our Republic. And we are a conservative nonprofit organization that's focused on campaign finance reform.
And when you talk about campaign finance reform, obviously campaign finance always comes up, especially as we're about to enter an election cycle, or it started right after the last election, but you know what I mean. What changes are you guys trying to make to the campaign election cycle, if you will, or the finances?
Well, we have kind of three different points that we're trying to cover as national issues. One is tax credits for small political contributions. Another would be taking limits off of checks so they're not forced to go through super PACs, so they can be donated directly to campaigns instead. And then the third issue, we actually hosted an event up at the National Press Club in D.C. that was focused on the effects of foreign money on campaigns.
Well, you know, super PAC is always the buzzword. When we start talking about campaign and finance, you have people that love them and people that hate them. And super PACs are essentially a proxy in a lot of times for a candidate specifically. But like one of the things we talked about yesterday is you lose the transparency of the donors when they go through the super PAC. It essentially launders money in a way.
Exactly, because
and you
once
could
you
say
donate,
legally,
yeah,
you could say legally laundered, but it throws it into the system where you have to dig a lot to find out where the money's actually coming from.
Where your money is going as well.
Yes, so you start getting into foreign interest and who's donating foreign. Are they donating through an American bank under an American company, but they're foreign owned, etc.? How would you want to change that, or what do you think transparency would be? What's the word I'm looking for? Exaggerated, if you will. How do you think that'll change if you guys make your movement? How do you think it'll change it, and how will that better benefit the campaign cycles?
Well, we think that once you donate to a super PAC, your money is kind of lost in terms of where it's going. We recognize that PACs serve a very specific function. I know I was talking to one person from home who's a doctor, and he goes, say we want to create a doctor's PAC that's something that's just doctors' interests, then that absolutely makes sense. But we're stuck in a political system where you're kind of forced to donate large checks to campaigns. And we think that if you're to super PACs instead of directly to campaigns. So we're trying to change it to where the money can be donated directly to the campaign, because that promotes more transparency within the political system. Mm-hmm. And then you know where your money is going and how it's going to be used versus, your money is being thrown to multiple different candidates and you're not really sure who.
Well, and I honestly really think it's a great idea, because any sort of transparency, and you look at every election over the last 12 years, there's always been questions of finance, where the money's going, who's it coming from, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a big point. Why is it so important? And you're a young lady, 22, I believe you said yesterday.
Yes.
Why is it so important to you at 22 that this is accomplished?
Okay, well, I know that last year I attended Freedom Fest with Students for Liberty, too, and someone from the LP came over to take our pictures, a whole entire group, and he asked who we were voting for, kind of wishing for Gary Johnson as an answer, and everybody said no one. So we're kind of living in a world where millennials are a bit jaded because we realize that our vote doesn't count in the political process. So what we're trying to do here at Take Back is we're trying to take it back to a government by the people and for the people. And we believe that what will incentivize millennial participation in the political system is our tax credit that we're pushing for. Because say I wanted to donate to a campaign. If I wanted to donate to that candidate, and I knew that I was going to get $20 back as a tax credit on my tax return, then I'm a lot more likely to donate to that candidate.
Yeah.
Because as millennials, we don't necessarily have the collateral that we can utilize a tax write-off on. I know my parents obviously utilize tax write-offs when donating to campaigns, and donations to our organization are tax deductible because we're a 501c3 organization. But it's just, as millennials, we can't utilize a write-off necessarily.
Right.
So that's kind of how we feel like that will make millennials' voices count in the political system.
Well, and I think this is, first of all, the fact that millennials are starting to actually get more involved at a younger age. Because even and I'll be the first one to admit, through 25 politics, I knew who I liked and who I didn't like. I knew what I liked and what I didn't like, but I wasn't active in it. I really I was in Boston at the time, so a completely liberal society, so my conservative views weren't welcome, so I kept quiet a lot of times. But as time has gone on, I wish I was much more active in youth, because as you realize, you're going to own all this at some point.
The national debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yours. It's not even mine anymore. It's all on you. We're mortgaging it down to you.
And then Social Security that we're never going to see any kind of payout for. So that's another thing.
Well, and I said, we were talking to Jared Mayer, who wrote a book, Disinherited, about millennials and finance. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, you really should. You guys actually would probably work really well together. We were talking about Social Security, and sadly for you guys, it probably won't be there. I think even for me, it's on the edge, and I'm only about a generation ahead of you guys. But, it's going to affect me more because I've been paying into it my entire life.
Exactly.
But then you start to have the problem of what's going to be there for the millennials. What's going to be there for those that actually need it. And we can have the discussion over welfare, social services, whatever. But the people who actually need it, and more importantly, the people who need this country to be financially set in 20 years and straighten it out.
It's my generation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of that comes from electing candidates that understand what millennials are going through and understand the future that they have if things keep going this way. So it does kind of impact campaign again, because now you need to be able to get your money for whatever representative, senator, presidential candidate, whatever, that you honestly believe in, versus the PAC system that we have right now, which was, you said, you never know where that money's going to go. They may say it's for X, Y, and Z, but you look into their bylaws of their nonprofit, and all of a sudden, well, we do that, and then 15% goes here, and 22%, and nobody looks that far into it.
Yeah, and you have no idea where the money is going.
So the end game for you guys, if it was a perfect society, if you were queen of the world right now, first of all, you wouldn't be allowed in America, but if you were, how would you like to see it play out in 15, 20 years?
Well, I believe that our founding fathers actually had a very awesome vision of how America was supposed to be structured. And I know that there's some millennials that are involved in the liberty movement that are saying, oh, well, we need to burn down the government and start and build it back up from scratch. But I don't believe that that's the situation. And I think in an ideal world, we would take America back to the vision that our founding fathers initially saw. And that was a government by the people and for the people that actually took into consideration the individual's voice in the political process.
And that's, when you talk about LP earlier, you talk about the Libertarian Party. You're a libertarian, is that safe to say?
Oh, yes, definitely.
And there's a disconnect between establishment Republicans and libertarians, and this is something we talk about a lot on our show, and it's becoming more and more important, I think, in the conversation. Why do you think the Libertarian Party is so important for this country?
Well, honestly, in terms of my personal identification, I would probably identify personally as libertarian and definitely philosophically libertarian. I think the LP is playing a very important role in that there's a lot of millennials that tend to identify with the LP, and then we're going, oh, why isn't Gary Johnson allowed to participate in debates? But then at the same breath, we're going, why isn't Jill Stein from the Green Party allowed to participate in debates? So we don't understand why there's this kind of two-party monopoly on the system.
We were warned against it. We were warned against it by George Washington.
Exactly. Our founding fathers had this really
all
awesome
bad.
vision.
All bad.
And then it just started to fall apart shortly thereafter. So, yeah, definitely. But I think that philosophical libertarianism is playing a huge role in the lives of millennials. If you look around this exhibit hall right now, we have Students for Liberty and we have Young Americans for Liberty, two organizations that I have been heavily involved with in the past. I was a campus coordinator for Students for Liberty, and I also served as the Mississippi State Chair for Young Americans for Liberty. So I've been heavily involved in all facets of the youth liberty movement. And I think that that's a really awesome vision for our future, seeing all these millennials involved in politics. And even if it's just on a philosophical level, we understand that there's these different free market economics issues, things that can solve the national debt. And then we understand that, oh, well, we don't want the government in our business. And
who does?
Yeah, exactly. And then we don't want the NSA. We don't care if you call it metadata. We don't want you involved in our stuff.
You can call it whatever cute name you want. You're still looking into my personal life where you don't belong. With Take Back, how can people find it and get involved?
Well, our model that we're trying to structure with Take Back Our Republic is a model that's similar to Americans for Prosperity's model with state-based chapters. So what we're looking to do is, and this is just a testimony to how much our organization has grown since we launched in January. And we already have state coordinators in 34 out of 51, including D.C. states.
Good for you.
So, yeah, it's really awesome. And it's just because this is an issue that people understand, oh, well, this is something that can actually make our voice count in the political process. So what we're looking to do is we have those three issues that I covered earlier, the tax credit for political contributions, the taking limits off of checks so they're not forced to go through super PACs, as well as the analyzing effects of foreign money on campaigns. Those are kind of our overarching national issues, but we believe that through our state coordinator program, we can set up state-based chapters where you're able to concentrate on a specific issue within your state that, so maybe in Alabama, for example, I'm from Alabama, we have seen issues in the past or have suspicions of, I'll put it this way, that governors have been bribed to not accept lottery money or things along those lines. And that could be seen as a kind of foreign money issue. Oh, Mississippi doesn't want Alabama to have the lottery because we know that that's going to hurt their little Biloxi kind of casino world. So you can kind of look at it in that kind of way as well. So Alabama can concentrate on that as an issue if they want to. Oh, well, we don't want Mississippi money influencing our campaigns. So just different states can focus on different issues that they feel are pressing issues within their own states.
Well, and that's, it's funny, we talk about foreign money and everyone thinks the federal level, but on the state level too, you see it a lot. Where you have one state, like you brought up gambling, prime example, you have one state that has legalized gambling and one doesn't. And when the second one tries to legalize, all of a sudden you have the first state throwing money against it.
Exactly.
Which was a big fight. In Massachusetts, they just passed legalized gambling this past year. But during that, there was a lot of money coming in from Connecticut that had casinos, Indian casinos, whatever, in Maine, trying to stop it because they're hurting. They're worried about their own money. So when you talk about foreign money, not only on a federal level but on a state level, it's important to make sure that, hey, you know what, this has to stay in-house, so to speak. And really, I agree with that. I understand that some people may live outside the state and own businesses in the state. All right, that's a caveat we can work around, right? Because if you own a business in that state, you still have a right to be represented in that state, I believe. But
exactly. But then, like I said, I was talking about earlier, I met with the Alabama Farmers Federation recently to discuss Take Back Our Republic. And as an organization, they take an anti-gambling stance. But they are an Alabama organization. They are the Alabama Farmers Federation. So it needs to stay in-state, and it needs to be the people in Alabama making that decision about whether or not gambling should be legalized, not foreign money, so to speak, from Mississippi influencing our policies within our own state.
It's a great cause. Where's the website so everyone could go and check you guys out? And maybe if they're one of the, 17 states that doesn't have, or 17 or 16 plus one states that doesn't have a state coordinator, somebody may be interested, how can they find you guys?
Okay, well, our website is takeback.org. And that's the first part of our name, which, once again, it's Take Back Our Republic. And the website is takeback.org. And what you can do is you can go ahead and log on to the website and create your own profile. And if this is a cause that you find to be extremely worthwhile, you can go ahead and start up a fundraising thing. We have a fundraising template. So you can say, oh, well, I want to raise $100 for Take Back Our Republic. So it shows you one of those little scales of how far you are away from reaching your goal. And if you're in one of our states that doesn't have a strong presence or doesn't have a state coordinator, then please feel free to contact me. You can find my information on the website as well. My name's Alexis Esneault, and my email is alexise@takeback.org. So any more information, I would be happy to fill you guys in.
Come on, social media. Throw your social media out there so everyone can follow. Everyone's got social media.
Well, honestly, in the Twitter sphere, I'm not as active as I would like to be. But my Twitter is Alexis Esneault, so it's just my name, and that's AlexisEsneault. If you're interested in following me on Twitter, I don't know how much I tweet, but maybe you guys will.
We're going to force you to start
Twitter
doing
sphere.
it more. We'll get you in. Finally, Alexis, the election is coming up 2016. As a young millennial, somebody who's very obviously politically involved, what would you like to see happen as far as changes to the policies of this country? What's the most important thing as a millennial, do you think?
Well, I know one thing that's very near and dear to my heart as a libertarian is I would like to see an end to the drug war. I know that this is conservative talk radio, so this might not be the most popular opinion, but I truly believe that it's putting a financial strain on our country. So if you look at different countries where drugs are legal, then there's less usage rates of those drugs. And I feel like our criminal justice system is kind of flawed that we're incarcerating so many people and spending so much money on these nonviolent drug offenses. And I know that there's some candidates that are working on bipartisan solutions to ending the drug war. Rand Paul would be one of them. I'm looking to that. I'm also looking to somebody who can fix the economy. Because this national debt, like you were talking about earlier, is something that millennials are going to inherit. And I think that that's just horrible because if you look at our generation, we're not exactly finding employment when we graduate. I just graduated from a private Jesuit college with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, and that's kind of $70,000 later. So, yeah, and I mean, granted, I'm going to law school in the fall, but it's just kind of millennials are having a very, very hard time finding employment, and the national debt is not helping us. Student debt is not helping us, and then that's the government controlling the kind of university system, because if it was a more kind of free market within universities and universities were actually competing without government interference, then I truly believe that the student debt wouldn't be as much of a problem. But I think that that's something else that we need to address kind of from an economic standpoint. We don't need student loan forgiveness. I think that's ridiculous. We just need to reform the whole entire system and make it to where it's easier for people to pay for college. So just different things along those lines. But I would say that my number one thing is fixing the economy. And I feel like there's a couple of different ways that we can do that.
Outstanding. I appreciate your time here from the floor of Freedom Fest. Check out takeback.org. Get involved. And this is one of the coolest things about this sort of event is how many people can kind of network. And I think that people think there's a much bigger disconnect between quote-unquote conservatives and libertarians than there truly is. And I think that's one of the great benefits of this sort of event, especially Freedom Fest, where you're seeing them come together and have conversations, and that's how problems are going to actually get solved versus just Washington throwing it back and forth and not doing a damn thing.
Definitely.
Alexis, I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more here on the SHR Media Network from the floor of Freedom Fest, Las Vegas, Nevada, after this.
The best late-night conservative talk show in America. In America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've